want to welcome everybody who's joining us for what is our first ever ProfitSolv live Q&A. Let me introduce myself. I introduce our esteemed panelists here, and then we will get going. So my name is Scott Clayson. I'm the VP of Marketing for ProfitSolv. I know we have a mix of people attending here today that come to us from some of the various products that are under the ProfitSolv umbrella. And that includes some pretty well-known, I think, legal practice management names such as Tabs 3 and CosmoLex, Rocket Matter, TimeSolv, Law Ruler. ProfitSolv has a couple of other companies that are part of the family, but most of us that are joining here today that are users of those products, welcome. We appreciate you being here. And we also have a mix of people who are joining us that don't necessarily use any of the ProfitSolv products. And so we're happy to have you. Welcome to our webinar. We want to make this a really a back and forth between ourselves and everyone who is here to truly let you ask any sort of questions under the sun about accepting electronic payments. It's a big sort of buzz here in the legal industry, specifically in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of changes in the last couple of years. So let's speak to that. And as sort of the segue there, let me introduce to you our two panelists that are the real experts in the electronic payment game. So we'll let ladies go first. Joyce, if you want to introduce yourself and who you are and a little bit of your background so everybody can get to know you a bit.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, Scott, I need to say thank you for introducing me as an esteemed panelist. There are very few times when you are being introduced to someone and you're in a group of people and someone says that you are esteemed. If you ask me the definition of esteemed, I could come up with something off the cuff, but let me just tell you, I like it. So every time we're out, I'm going to ask a personal favor. When we're together, I will introduce you as esteemed and you can introduce me as esteemed. And I think we'll just scratch each other's backs that way.
It's a pinky swear right now that we'll put together. Thank you. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So my name is Joyce Crawford. I am an attorney licensed in North Carolina. I've been licensed since 2012, but don't let that licensure fool you. I think that the practice of law and being in the legal business is best left to the folks we have attending. I have done enough of that. And I personally am most passionate about learning about legal technology and helping folks institute solutions in their businesses, whether they be small form solutions or just entire practice overhauls. It is a big deal to invest your time and resources and energy into looking at technology. And I am enormously appreciative when someone allows me to take that off of their plate and then gives me the vote of confidence to give them my honest opinion. And I have been doing that since my time as a practice management advisor at the North Carolina Bar Association. And then from there, worked for various legal technology companies, either as a consultant, an advisor, a trainer, or as a sales representative. So knowing my own solution as well as the competition. So that's who I am and that's what I do. And because I am also personally very passionate about Girl Scouts, I will tell you, you've got about 130 days until Girl Scout cookie season. And we have a brand new cookie this year called Raspberry Rally. And if you're interested, please look me up on Twitter and I will happily sell those to you.
All right, we got our hookup for Girl Scout cookies. We've already won in this webinar as far as I'm concerned.
We've won.
Thanks, Joyce. Adam, I'm not sure how you're going to follow that up, but good luck. Buddy.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is yourself.
Yeah, this is why I don't go after Joyce ever. Anything
Never
that we
again.
do, I don't go after Joyce. My name is Adam Holden. I'm the director of payments for ProfitSolv. And for the past about 5.5 years, I've been helping attorneys get set up with electronic payments, as well as integrated payments into the practice management systems that they currently use or out in the market looking to use. So definitely passionate about ePayments, electronic payments, credit cards, ACH, all of that, and making sure that everyone understands how to use it properly and how to get the best out of it.
Great, thanks, Adam. We've already had a question come across, and to sort of reiterate that with questions like, how does ProfitSolv related to Rocket Matter? This is probably for somebody who uses Rocket Matter. So again, to explain a little bit about ProfitSolv and who we are, ProfitSolv as an entity has been together for about 2 years and a little over 2 years, and is the umbrella company that owns Rocket Matter, CosmoLex, Tabs 3, TimeSolv, Law Ruler, a couple other companies, one called Clearview Social, another one called Paymo. There's 8 companies total in that umbrella. So if you are a user of Rocket Matter, if you're a user of CosmoLex, a user of TimeSolv, you are part of the ProfitSolv family, which is, something that we're starting to kind of broadcast, I think, a little bit more, obviously, that you are part of a greater family. If you look closely at each of those websites now, the logos will say by ProfitSolv in kind of small print. But the main genesis here is that ProfitSolv is here to provide the solutions for professional service industries, mainly in the legal space. We also have another company called Mango, which essentially is legal. I said legal accounting practice management. Does a lot of the same things that say like CosmoLex or Rocket Matter does, but just for accountants instead of for lawyers. So that is that is who we are, and that's what ProfitSolv is. And I think that's a little bit of a segue that is nice. I've now used segue twice in the first 5 minutes, so I got to retire that word for the rest of the webinar. But it's a nice transition, let's say that, to each one of those companies, whether you're a user or not, has developed their own in-house, if you will, payment processing feature within the last year or so. There's now CosmoLex Pay, there's now Rocket Matter Pay, there's now Tabs 3 Pay, there's now TimeSolv Pay. Yep. And it's part of a larger trend, Adam, that I'd like you to speak of before we start taking questions. And while we're speaking here a little bit off at the top, I want everybody who's attending here to think of any questions that are coming to mind about ePayments. But Adam, give us a little bit of the lay of the landscape of how accepting electronic payments has kind of changed in the legal space, specifically in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and electronic payments has had the trajectory of becoming more popular with many industries. But the one thing that we can most likely attribute the growth or the expansion, at least over the past couple of years, would be the pandemic, COVID. We went from being able to go wherever we wanted to go and pay however we wanted to pay to being, stuck in our homes, having to order everything offline. Ordering things off of Amazon, even paying for professional services through online portals, because you weren't able to go to the office and swipe your credit card or pay them cash, however it was going to be. So we've seen more and more software companies, SaaS companies, start to develop, like you said, their own internal integrated payment processing to be able to meet our clients where they're at, right? That's something that you say all the time, Scott. Being able to send out those invoices with an easy payment link. But that's where the whole industry is headed. And now it's here to stay, right? Like it may have just had a slow up creep over the past few years, but obviously the trajectory ran up. We started seeing it everywhere. And about 78% of all the payments that were taken in 2020 were online or through some portal. So if that says anything, that's where we're headed.
I would love to get and you guys who are attending here, if you could just throw in the Q&A section, like how many of you at your firm are accepting electronic payments? And I'm just kind of off the cuff. Would love to see some people kind of just throw it in there that, yeah, yes, I am, yes, I am, yes, I am, whatever it might be. Would love to be able to see that. Because I said the numbers tend to be, we know it's probably in that 70-75% neighborhood. And we know there's some law firms that, because of the nature of the type of law they practice, they cannot take electronic payments. Right? So that makes sense. And yeah, almost everybody that's answering that is here says, yep, they are. Some of them are using LawPay, which we all know and have relationships with. Almost all the products that are part of the ProfitSolv family have integrations with LawPay for the going back years before developing our own solution. A couple of people are working at it. yeah, it's almost everybody who answered here. I think everybody who answered said yes, except for one person said they're working on it. So we know that there is the acceptance of electronic payments. That's great. I'm going to seed this a little bit. The questions and start with one that I know comes up quite frequently to Adam. Specifically, I know you get this a lot. And Joyce, you talk to a lot of firms about this. So let's kick off this sort of question back and forth with surcharging. The idea of adding a certain percent of your invoice, call it whatever you want. I've seen it called lots of different things in lots of different places, a convenience fee, a digital collection fee, whatever you want to call it. But the idea is you pass on, as a law firm, as everybody who said yes here that they do, they are accepting electronic payments. There are processing fees that come with that. And the first, very usually one of the first questions is, can I pass those fees on to my client as a surcharge? So let's talk about that.
Let's talk about
Adam, why don't you, first of all, surcharging, is it something that firms should be doing? Can they do it?
Yeah, great question, Scott. Great question. Let's start with that first one, because it's can and then should, right? I will tell you, in almost every jurisdiction in the United States, and you should always check with your bar association to find out if it is acceptable in your jurisdiction to do so. Almost everyone allows for surcharging, right? So the answer to can 98% of the time is yes. However, there is the question of should, and I think this depends entirely on the type of business that you practice, right? So Adam can talk to you about how this actually works and turning it on and the functionality of it and how it benefits you as a business owner to do it and how it protects your funds. But I'll tell you from a practical perspective, if you have a high volume, limited scope type of practice, like let's say you're the type of firm that is located downtown Main Street in a small town, and you get a tremendous amount of traffic tickets because someone gets popped, maybe they get pulled for a DUI and they need to find a lawyer and they walk into your office. Right? Those folks generally are not going to come back to you because they needed you in a time of convenience. And right there, it was an expediency and a convenience choice that they made. Those folks are willing to pay for services right then and are not going to be repeat clients. They're not going to spend a tremendous amount of time analyzing your invoices. You're not going to develop a long-term relationship with those people. A convenience fee in limited scope, limited in time and service for a specific fee works really, really well for a surcharged practice, right? If your practice, on the other hand, is designed around repeat clients, long-term business where you have to have an extended relationship with folks, and sometimes that can be as ubiquitous as family law, right? But it can be very extended family law issues if you have a boutique family law issue. We have a really nice one here that caters specifically to wealthy men who work in the RTI area, very high asset gentlemen. That is who this firm caters to. Those are long-term clients. That's not a surcharging business, right? So right. I would think about who you cater to. I would think about the relationship that you want to build with your clients. I would think about whether or not they are going to take issue with service fees. Most people generally don't, but it's definitely something that you should think about as a yes or a no. But there is not a definitive answer for law firms whether they should or should not pass on surcharges.
Let's talk about, first of all, and this actually this question came through and I'll make sure I'm clarifying if they were specifically talking about surcharging. They said it's illegal, and it said CT and RI. I assume that means Connecticut and Rhode Island. Adam, again, I think we would emphasize, we're not going to give you that advice exactly which states, but we do know that the vast majority of bar associations, state bar associations, have made rulings on the topic, correct?
Yes, that is true, and that's why we always say, first, check with your bar association, make sure that they are okay with it, and two, make sure it's legal in the state that you're practicing, right? And that's solely just calling the ABA, calling the state bar association, looking online, doing some due diligence, and you'll be able to figure it out pretty quickly. And these rules, regulations, that they do change from time to time. So that is one reason why we're not going to say exactly, where you can do it and you can't do it. But it's just a simple phone call, research away.
And I'll say, guys, from my perspective, whether or not we would say it or couldn't say it because of time, as a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, not your lawyer. So I'm not going to give you any legal advice as to whether or not something is actually legal or not. You are legal professionals and you can look it up. But a simple call to your state bar asking for the opinion. In most jurisdictions, your fees and what you are allowed to charge clients, if you go back to your rules of ethics, just about everybody's rule 1.5. Just about everybody's rule 1.5. You might have something in your general statutes in your state that creates some larger framework for businesses generally, and they might have a special carve out specifically for lawyers. But just about everybody's governed by rule 0.5 of the rules in your specific state. So I'd start there.
Great. I have some really good questions coming in specifically around surcharging, some others, some other topics that we're going to get to. So let's follow up on that. Good question on can you surcharge on debit cards versus like just a credit card?
So as for regulations, you cannot surcharge a debit card, which is a really good reason that if you are going to surcharge, you want to make sure that the system that you're going to be using or implementing understands how to do it from not only on like a settlement standpoint, but also on the ability to apply fees automatically or remove those fees. So all of our integrations that we have with surcharging, they actually can tell what is a debit card and what is a credit card, and will automatically apply the fee or remove it depending on what ends up coming up as the final payment method. And also ACH transactions or e-check transactions, those are prohibited to surcharge as well.
Great. And the follow-up question, great questions, Tom. Joyce, I don't know if you had something to add to that. It looked like you were about to say something there.
I was going to answer a question that I wanted to follow up really quickly, but it's it kind of bounces off of what Adam is saying here. I want to specifically call out Tom Hudson, who's currently using LawPay and is considering CosmoLex Pay. I think you should absolutely take a look at CosmoLex Pay specifically for the reasons that we're talking about. It is integrated. It is a legal specific solution. It gives you a tremendous number of benefits aside from just being a credit card processor. And I'm going to just defer back over to Adam for this. But all of our solutions are designed to give you the maximum benefit, not just here's the tool that everybody else is using.
Right. Correct. It's not just it integrates with the solution that you're going to be using. So it's going to give you, that automation that you're looking for, and it's all going to tie into one place. It's not like, it's not just another tool. It's just another payment. It comes directly from the creators of the software that you're using. So it's going to work the best.
we could probably talk all day about the advantages of integrated payments right within.
Oh yeah.
You're doing your time and billing. There's another follow-up question that was both Tom and somebody else sort of asked the similar type of question, and that is, let's talk about the advantages of, first of all, like if your state doesn't allow surcharging, can you provide a cash discount on bank transfer or just cash check, let's say, debit? In other words, anything that's not a credit card payment. And are there advantages to doing it in that way, where maybe you build in what your fees are going to be in your regular pricing, I think is what we're getting at. And instead you offer a discount if they pay by a check or, an ACH payment, e-check and so on. Is that one way to sort of like get around it without, I don't want to say get around it, but understand like, hey, because, gas stations do this. I've seen that where they'll get actually a discount on taking cash versus a credit card.
Yeah.
Run into that setup much?
Yeah. So, Adam, I'll pass over to you, but let me just throw in a little bit of color around this because it happens all the time, right? People either say, I don't want to surcharge. I'm not comfortable surcharging. I'm not sure who I should surcharge. I'm not sure if I should accept credit cards for all the types of services that I provide. And I don't know, yes or no, which way to go on this, right? I just want to be really clear to everyone who is attending this call. You are running a business and the cost of accepting payments is an actual cost. It is a business cost. It is an expense that you have to deal with because it's a service provider that you're working with, right? It is someone who is processing that, who is preemptively putting money into your account, who's managing clawbacks, who's managing a tremendous amount of risk on your side, who provides customer support, who provides services to you and to your clients. It is a service provider, and we just have to pay for that. As human beings asking another person for something, there's at least a barter system. In this case, we're using cash, right? I just want to make sure everyone understands it has to be paid for somehow. We can't just ignore it. So what I see very frequently in law firms who are uncomfortable passing along surcharging is when they add either a cost to a specific matter that is can be attributed to representation in that specific matter, or a hard cost is what we call it internally. If they add a hard cost or a specific cost to a matter, they'll add overhead fees to it. And sometimes that comes in, 3.5%, 4.5%, right? Sometimes they'll add that overhead fee to every time card that they enter into a matter, right? And it's just part of it. Or they'll build in overhead fees as part of their service agreement. So no matter how you're doing this, if you want to maintain the same profit margin and to accept electronic payments, which is a good idea, everyone should be doing it, you just have to account for those somehow. So if you're not passing along service fees, that overhead cost or that overhead fee, either associated with time, costs, or both, just needs to be part of your billing process. Adam, anything you want to add?
No, that's a great point. And I just want to make one thing clear, especially because we did use cash discounting exclusively here. So some we did ask that. Cash discounting is another sort of program. So I do want to make that clear that surcharging is a program that's supplied by a merchant service provider, that's approved by the office, like basically your Amex, your Visa, your MasterCard, your Discover. They approve of this program or service that you're offering. Cash discounting is another type of service and program to where you're offering a discount for cash. There is specific verbiage that has to be used. There's specific signage that has to be used. And there's its own rules and regulations around that. So when you're looking for something to implement, you want to make sure that it's built for that. All right. So that's our systems are built for surcharging, and it's going to help you stay within that regulation. But as Joyce was saying, I mean, you could build these costs into what you actually charge a client, right? So it's adjusting business costs, and it is a cost of doing business, which a lot of our clients are told.
Okay. Yeah, it certainly is. So there are lots of specific questions that we're getting here in the chat about particular practice areas and how to manage this. I just, I love all these questions, guys. I hope that we get to them. I hope we get to all of them. Yeah. They're all so interesting.
I know, right? It's gonna be great.
Let's pivot a little bit. And one of the questions that came in a little earlier was about what type of law services can get paid via electronic payment. And it might be a little easier to, I think, talk about which ones can't. And I think we can speak to that a little bit, like, if you practice in certain areas. I think bankruptcy is one that I know off the top of my head a little bit, but I'll let you guys, you're more the experts than I am. Are there certain areas of law that you just simply can't accept e-payment?
Yeah, so it's not that they can't, it's just that the way that they get paid, or the individuals who pay them, are not going to be paying by electronic payment. And I also want to say electronic payment is defined in these services for ACH or e-check services and credit card processing services. So I know like a wire could technically be an e-payment. So I just want to make sure that we're not including those sort of things in the discussion. But you have you basically have anybody who's going to be getting paid by insurance companies, insurance, defense, especially in healthcare, things like that. Bankruptcy is going to be one, because you're not allowed to accept a credit card for someone who is going to be going into any sort of bankruptcy, Chapter 11, 13, anything like that. And you're not allowed to accept credit cards for that, and they know that. They usually will not sign up for us, especially if they are like a full bankruptcy firm. But we do have bankruptcy firms that also have an arm of real estate, wills and trusts, things like that, to which we can offer those services to. So if you do have a blended firm that may have a service that can't accept it, we can always set it up for anybody else, and they can accept it too.
Okay. Another question that came in here. We keep credit cards on. Mark, is a great question, and I'll laugh a little bit. You guys, Adam and Joyce will know why when I read it. We keep credit cards on file, and each month we charge that card on file. We do not want to make the client do anything. It's all driven in our office. Do we support this? Mark, you are talking our language. That is one of the CEOs of one of the ProfitSolv companies. TimeSolv is beats this drum all the time. He calls it zero AR, and is using that methodology of, just like we all have given our credit cards once to Netflix or Amazon Prime, or even paying our utilities, and they just charge us on a monthly fashion. Law firms more progressive law firms are starting to do this as well. So the answer, do you support this? Yes, I know for sure TimeSolv Pay does it. It's one of the things we really champion. Not only can you store the credit cards on file and charge them each month, you can do it in bulk. So you could take hundreds of invoices and with one click, run payments on those hundreds of invoices where you have the credit cards on file. With CosmoLex Pay, Rocket Matter Pay, Tabs 3 Pay, I can't answer that question specifically, but we can certainly follow up on that. Unless, Adam, you may know, but I don't want to put you on the spot here. Feel free to say we'd have to check on those other products.
Yeah, I would have to say that we would have to check in with each one of those products to see if it's available or when it's going to become available, if it's not already.
Absolutely is with TimeSolv. I do know that. So let's get through some of the questions. How often should you, Aaron, good question. How often should you review your payment processing agreement? And I think this gets into a little bit about even looking at your processing statement every month. So yeah, how often should you be reviewing that agreement?
So you're going to be wanting to review that usually every year. And it's not so much the agreement, but where payment processors are going through pricing changes at least twice a year, which is why it's always good to review the contract before. Yeah, obviously we're all attorneys. They're good to review it before we sign anything, right? But we want to make sure that we're reviewing that and seeing how long any terms are for. But I would suggest yearly, because you're typically looking at 1 to 2 price increases per year, depending on the year. I know during 2019, 2020, they actually stopped any sort of price increases for interchange. But I know it is in effect now.
Let's talk a little bit about that, just at a greater reviewing your processing statement, because I think we would all encourage you to figure out what your real, I think it's called effective rate. Do I have that, Adam, correct, that terminology? It's the idea that every month you don't know exactly what the processing rates that you pay, processing fees you're going to pay are going to be, because the variety of different cards that are used is what is going to oftentimes drive your rate. So if half your clients use American Express versus maybe only 10% of your clients use American Express, that's going to make a difference. And I use Amex because that's always considered kind of the most expensive card. But I think it's important then to understand all the various credit card processing options that you have out there, and there are lots. Whether you use our products, whether you use Stripe, PayPal, LawPay, whatever, they will tell you about, here's the processing fees, and kind of give you a number that sounds great, but you do have to kind of look at that fine print every month and to essentially add up. It's kind of simple math. I think you add up, like, what did I pay in total versus what did I process in total, figure out the percentage, and that's truly your effective rate. And Adam, I may have just completely explained everything about reviewing a statement, but do you have, what else it's important to do, I think, I guess, is the bottom line, right?
Yeah, it is important to do. And the easiest way to do that is calculating out the effective rate, as you were describing, Scott. if you do want to get deeper into it, it's going to start probably not really making sense. It's kind of like reviewing a phone bill back in the day. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but you see charges that it's not even in English and there's a cost to it, and you're like, okay, I guess. But there's many people that are always willing to at least help you look at it. I know I have trained, all of my teams to be able to review these. So if it is something that you're looking to tackle, we can help you with it.
Okay. A couple of people are putting in some specific questions about some of the products they use under ProfitSolv, some with Rocketmatter. Lease, a question about credit card versus e-check and how Rocketmatter can accept that. And I know, Bernard, you had a question about TimeSolv specifically. Not going to try to answer support questions right now, but we have these documented in this question and answer. So we will follow up with the correct support people at the respective companies to try to answer those questions specifically for you. We want to make sure that that gets done. Leon, you had I may need a little bit more clarification here. Let's say your billing rate is $250 an hour. It's family law. With most that come from legal match, let's say they always use at least a $1,500 upfront consultation agreement. And some potential new clients say they have to ask around, come up with like half of that, $750, and agree to pay the other $750 in the next couple of weeks. That's your question, and says this is for family law matters. I guess I'm understanding exactly, Leon, what question you're asking about that scenario you just described. So maybe if you want to put in a little bit more description of what you'd like us to answer, we will go ahead and do that. Question came through, is there ever a time we should also get a signed credit card authorization when using electronic payments for third-party payments? Good question, Rita. I know I say that for everybody because you guys are all asking good questions, but let's talk about credit card authorization. That goes back to the other question about storing the credit card number, right? The idea of collecting your credit card authorization or the credit card information from your client up front. Good idea, bad idea, Adam?
Well, it's a good idea, and honestly, using integrated systems, you can save those credit card numbers not on a piece of paper, but inside of the system as what we call a token, where we get tokenization from, and that could be used in place of the credit card. Keeps everything safe, and that's how you'd be able to use any sort of payment plans, recurring billing plans, and also recharge a credit card on behalf of a client, at their ask.
Yeah. I'm gonna make you talk about something else here, Adam, because I think it's important. When you bring someone into your firm and you go through the intake process with them, my mantra is get payment information on file right then, right there. That's when you need to do it. If you're going to represent them, you need to do this, but you don't want to keep that credit card number anywhere in your firm. You don't. And the reason you don't, folks, is PCI compliance. If you keep credit card information in your firm, that means you then, as a business, have to be PCI compliant. I would love for you to just raise your hand if you have ever been through a PCI compliance audit, if you have tried to become PCI compliant, if you know what PCI compliance is. Folks, if you are accepting credit cards in your firm and you are literally writing things down or keeping things in a file somewhere, it is a security risk. It is a security risk. Please stop, please stop, please stop. If you can do me one personal favor today, please stop. And that's really why tokenization is so critical here, guys. So Adam, I'm going to toss it back over to you. If you can explain how tokenization prevents the need for individual businesses to be PCI compliant, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, of course. So the tokenization, as I was stating earlier, it's just a token. So it's a random generation of numbers, 16 numbers. And what it does is it takes the place of the actual credit card number. So once you put it into the system, all you're ever going to see is the last four numbers of a credit card. Everything else has been truncated, or it just doesn't even exist, and all you see is the last four. The same thing happens with any sort of ACH bank account number that goes into our systems. You can never retrieve that number again. Honestly, I couldn't even retrieve that number if I tried, and I oversee the systems, right? So it's very, very safe. The only company, if you want to say, that has that credit card number is the actual processor, and they're behind their locked mainframes and everything else like that. So once you use that, it's gone forever. You never have to worry about it laying on a piece of paper somewhere. You don't have to worry about staying within compliance. You don't have to worry about doing that hour of PCI compliance quarterly or yearly. It keeps everything very, very safe. The one thing that I tell personal clients is that tokenized credit card number in this system is safer than the credit card inside of your client's wallet or drawer or wherever they keep it. So it's actually safer in our systems than it is in their own hands.
I always have heard the analogy, like it's safer what you just described than when you give your credit card to the waiter at a restaurant who takes it away from you, walks back to somewhere else, and you really have no idea what they may be doing with that credit card, other than running the tab on your bill. That's the analogy I've always heard, because you're like, all of a sudden it's out of your possession for literally like 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it takes, 5 minutes, to get your restaurant bill. Okay, a couple other questions here. Dennis, if this is Dennis Kennedy, the Dennis Kennedy I know, I'm privileged to have an esteemed, I've used the word esteemed again.
Listen,
how dare I?
God, how dare you?
You used it twice. Come
Dennis
on.
is an esteemed member of the tech community. If it is the Dennis Kennedy that he was the chair of like the ABA Tech Show at one point in time, and is a wonderful human being. But the question that he asked, if it is the Dennis that I know, would you walk us through our experience and the client experience of actually paying? Like, what do I do as the firm? What does the client see? What is their payment experience? What do I see when the client pays? So again, it's slightly different for every system, depending on what you're using. If you use one of our products or using LawPay or whatever the case may be. But I think in generalities, let's maybe talk about best case experience of how you as a law firm should be experiencing asking for payment electronically, how the client experiences being asked, what they do, how they're seeing that, and then what do they do when they're paying. So I don't know, Joyce or Adam, both of you could kind of tackle this from kind of from beginning to end, like, first, like, how is a firm going to make sure that when they're asking for payment, they're asking for it electronically in the easiest fashion? Let's start there.
So let's start on that side, and that's really more my side than Adam's side, I think. Adam, if you want to step in, please feel free.
No. Please,
So when you're creating your invoices in any of these systems, you'll have the opportunity to include a tremendous amount of data on the invoice. Everything in ProfitSolv provides customized templates that you can send out to your clients, and that's going to include every fee or charge that you are charging to them, either on a one-time basis or a recurring basis, and you can provide as much detail as you'd like on any template that we have or that you personally create and upload into the system, right? In there, it will absolutely say, including your surcharged amount, if you choose to pass on surcharges. If you aren't passing on surcharges, then however you're managing those fees will come in there. Maybe you've built them into your hourly rate, maybe you've built them into an overhead cost, whatever it happens to be. It will appear with as much or as little detail as you would personally like. When you send out those invoices, on the top of that page, there will be a link for them to just, here's this email, I'm going to open this, and then there's a link on the top of that invoice, right? In some of our systems, you might be using a client portal, so you can also send out an invoice via client portal, and someone can just choose to pay via client portal. That payment link is also in your client portal. So from the client perspective, they will receive a notification either in email or client portal that they have an invoice to pay. They will then open the invoice that you've received to them, that they have received from you, and they will simply click a link. In that link, depending on what they're paying, they will either be required to pay the full or the partial amount, depending on what system you're using, what they're being charged for, and if they're paying to an operating or to a trust account. It gets kind of granular at that point, and they will choose, they can either pay the amount in full or not, again, depending, and they'll see everything in the invoice right there. And it's the same way you would pay any other bill online. You put your credit card information in, if it's not already on file, and someone just doesn't, give you, hey, I'm going to run your payment for you, right? So if they are getting a one-time invoice, there's a link. They pay it the way they pay any other bill. If they have a recurring payment, they typically are going to get a notification from the firm that's best practice to do that this is about to be billed or has been billed on behalf of the law firm, and then they don't have to do anything if it's just a standard recurring payment. Adam, you want to add any color to that about the back end? Don't feel obligated. If that was a phenomenal answer.
I was going to say, like, I don't really know if there's anything I can add there.
Well, actually, the one thing that is important, I think, note as well from, again, what does the client or the law firm themselves have to do that is important to understand when you ask and receive payment in this fashion is your invoice itself then will automatically get marked as paid. It's that allocating payment part. And that's one of the real great efficient things about accepting electronic payment, right? Is that if you get a check that's in the mail, literally, or cash or whatever the case may be, you have to record that payment in your accounting system. Then you have to allocate that payment to the specific invoice so that the invoice is marked as paid. And I know from experience, and Joyce, I think you know this too, there are too many law firms that don't bother to go through that entire process. They more likely are, yes, they're recording their payments, but they don't necessarily allocate them to the specific invoices. And at the end of the month, they just hope that the amount that they invoice matches the amount they received. And if it doesn't match, they haven't necessarily done a good enough job of like, well, where's my missing AR? So you got to allocate every payment. And electronically, it all happens, like, you don't have to do anything. Once you send out that invoice with the payment information, the link to it, whether it's in the email, the invoice, or both, a portal, or whatever the case may be, once they submit themselves, you're golden. Or in the case, that other question that came up where you're storing the credit card information, and again, you're running the payments, same thing. You're going to get notified this payment was made. You can notify the client this payment was made, and it'll mark that invoice as paid, saving gobs of time and efficiency in payment collection. So not only will you save time in how you collect payment, but you're going to be receiving payment on a much higher percentage, in theory, close to 100% of all your invoices if you accept it in that way.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, another question that came in, does our payment systems, payment reminders and automatic payments? Again, we have integrated into our various products, and this kind of gets into that question of if you take electronic payments, they're not all created equal. You do want, a product that can do some of those things that are really convenient, like a reminder that a payment is due, or automatic payments that go out, or charge a credit card automatically, in whatever sort of criteria that you've created or filters you've created. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Joyce, you want me to go first? I'll take it from that standpoint. So we do have the ability in a lot of our softwares to set up what's called recurring billing plans. Now we have recurring billing, we have payment plans. Just quickly, the difference: payment plan, you have to have a balance to draw that payment off of or to pay towards, and a recurring billing is, I like to say, like, oh, and someone's like, oh, I got them on retainer, I pay them every month. You're just charging someone's credit card a set amount every single month because you may do the same amount of work for them, or you have an agreement with them that you're going to charge John's card $1,000 a month, and you do his whatever legal work he has going on that he's being charged for. Right. So we do have that ability.
Versus the firm.
What was that?
Versus the individual who you may have handed them a $10,000 invoice and they're like, look, I can't pay that all at once. And you're like, okay, Let's put you in a recurring payment plan. What can you afford to pay every month? You set that up, and that's
exactly
off that balance.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that once you have the payment integrations, you can actually have all that done automatically. The card will run at the same time every single month, even if it falls on a Sunday. I always get asked that question. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. If you're in the office, if you're not in the office, it's going to run, and it's going to run at the same time, ensuring that you're going to get paid.
And I think that's an important question to ask when evaluating what payment system am I going to adopt? So that's, this was an anonymous person who asked that question. So, but that is, there's kind of like the checklist of like, here's what I should be asking when evaluating all these various ways in which I can take payment. And I think we've already talked a lot about the ones that are what makes integrated payments within, whether it's our products or other products that you have, wherever you're doing your billing and your invoicing, that's going to be the best and easiest place to actually then take your payment electronically. So I know we already answered a bit of the question, I think Joyce, you did, about will that surcharge fee show up, it will be disclosed on the payment receipt and so on. And the answer was yes, that will happen. So let's see, I'm looking at
I like the very last question that's been asked here, Scott, was if I'm using LawPay now, can I sign up for the internal processor and use it for a little while? Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. Turn on the integrated processor. You're going to see some massive benefits, right? This is not a sales call or a sales webinar for our tools, but it is really important that you as a business owner evaluate what's out there. And for you to get your hands dirty, get your feet wet, put your hands in lots of pots, whatever analogy you want to use, right? I thoroughly encourage you to try out the payment processor that you think might be the best fit for you. If you're currently using LawPay and it works, I love that for you. I think that's phenomenal. They are a wonderful member of our legal community, have supported lawyers for years and years and years. But if you haven't evaluated whatever service you're using, LawPay, your bank service, Stripe, Clover, whatever, right? Then you need to look at other solutions. It's just time. And one of the easiest ways to have a really in-depth evaluation of whatever you're using is to just turn on something that's naturally integrated with the service that you're tied to the most. And that is your practice management solution.
and to start experimenting. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
A question did circle back on a little bit about kind of the whole surcharging and additional fees in this day and age where clients are concerned about costs. How can lawyers tack on all these fees you're discussing without just losing clients? So the idea, if you do add surcharging, you're much more likely to lose clients on small fees than big charges for legal work. I would agree. Small fees seem to be part of the cost of doing business, which I think we would all agree to here, not something which should be passed on to a client. 100%. I think everyone here would agree to that statement, Bernard. And I think we may have said it earlier, but oftentimes, the invoicing is the last interaction you have with your client, and tacking on that additional whatever percent sort of leaves a bad taste in the mouth a little bit. So again, we've already talked about how you can maybe mitigate that with some of that cash discounting or other ways you can just build in take that, you've analyzed your last 6 months of processing fees, on average that, your percent you're paying is X, then you raise your billing rate, let's say, by that, and that, to kind of eat into that. All right. Michelle mentioned that their credit card authorization they get via DocuSign, only entering the last 4. Then they call to verbally obtain the actual full number and the expiration date. That's one way to acquire that information. Michelle, I believe I recognize your name. I think you're a TimeSolv client, if I remember from my days at TimeSolv. Dennis, it was the Dennis Kennedy.
It was Dennis Kennedy. Can we circle back to Michelle for a second, though? Because Dennis, you're here. You're great. We love you. We've given you all the accolades you need. Say that as someone who's also a Dennis fan. I want to circle back to Michelle. So Michelle, I love that you are avoiding having to be fully PCI compliant. I think that's fantastic. It's smart. I love that you have the credit card authorization on file with a signature. I think that is smart. I think that is fantastic. I wonder, though, as someone who makes a lot of phone calls every single day, how you get that payment authorized on time every time. If you can't get someone on the phone, or how many phone calls you're having to make. I would encourage you to evaluate the amount of time that it's costing you in your business to do that. And if there are other ways that you could utilize your staff's time or your time when you're having to do that. Not that the way you're doing it is wrong, but that is a specific process that I would encourage you to look very, very closely at, because I think you can probably save yourself some time, you can reduce some data, and you can probably make collections a lot easier with a more standardized electronic payment process like what we're talking about here.
Somebody mentioned, I mentioned when I talked about TimeSolv Pay and zero AR, is this zero AR also auto charge debit cards or auto ACH? So important, it's not auto charging. You are still actually like it's the idea of you're storing the credit card information on file. You're running the payment then on your timeline, but that gets to the second half of your question. How is Reg E complied with? I don't know the regulation. I'm going to be full transparency there. Specifically, the requirement for written authorization where the amount varies. Yeah, exactly. One of the things in some of the firms that we've talked to who use this methodology as part of their intake is statement and authorizing and making them sign. When we send out your invoice, if you have no dispute with that invoice amount after 5 days, then we will be charging you. So 5 days, 10 days, whatever the window is that you're comfortable with. And again, check with your bar associations about if you're allowed to do this or not. But I know the firms that do this, it's a large family law firm that has offices in both Colorado and in California. That's exactly how they do it. They receive authorization in writing and signed about how they're going to be charging based on when they receive the invoice and how long until they will actually run that charge. But in fairness, they really have this streamlined, and they know they send out their invoices they do it twice a month. They send them out on, I believe, the 5th and the 20th of every month. So they know that they're going to collect payment then on the 10th and the 25th of every month. Every month they know exactly when their money is coming into their account. Makes it very reliable from a cash flow point of view. Info is entered into TimeSolv and stored via LawPay. This week an auto charge card, but I'm reading again. Michelle had a follow up in case the card signature is disputed. Tom, we definitely will have somebody from CosmoLex Pay talk to you about comparison between LawPay and CosmoLex Pay, since you're evaluating the difference of the two. And we would love to make sure that you have that full conversation. How does your discount rate compare against Costco or QBO? Do you offer same day settlement? Adam, you can probably speak to a little bit about the settlement process with our tools.
Yeah, and just about the cost. I'm not too sure about what Costco is using or what QBO is using for cost structures. There's a bunch of different ones out there. So if we were able to take a look at something, I'd be able to answer that more directly. And then the second part about that, what was that, Scott?
Settlement? Or do we offer same days? Yeah.
Yeah, so the settlement as it stands right now, we are next day funding. So the settlement and the batch out happens at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then those funds are available in the bank account the next business day. So if it happened Monday, those funds would be deposited into their account on Tuesday. And an important note about that is that that's credit cards as well as any sort of electronic checks you accepted. So we actually provide you next day funding on those e-checks. Still has to be treated like a regular check though. Something could still happen to it in that 5-day time frame. But we are giving you that money next day. So no same day as it stands right now.
Another good question came in. I know we have about 5 minutes left, so time has flown. Appreciate it. You know what? I don't know about you. I can keep going and pass this if the questions still come in. I know people have to probably roll. Just kind of throwing that out there. How frequent are chargebacks with ePayments? And this is Adam, probably more in your wheelhouse as well. If that's something that you have to deal with that more in accepting ePayments or not.
So really, like when it comes to chargebacks, so just credit cards are the only form of e-payment that could be charged back, and ACH is still a canceled payment, things like that. But I mean, chargebacks. I mean, honestly, like all of these years, I mean, of a real chargeback, I think I've really dealt with like 10, like count on two hands over the past over 5 years. But chargebacks are really honestly mitigated on the firm's level, because a chargeback and I'm sure Joyce could attest to this as well, like a chargeback usually happens if there's confusion about something, right?
Right.
So like Joyce, I'm sure you can talk about like, retained documents, things like that, that should be, prepared, regularly, and make sure that they're checked so they know exactly what they're being charged. Things like that. But you'll always have, maybe one or two of those clients that get angry at something. You're always gonna run into that. But your communication, and basically communication is going to be the key when it comes to charging clients and making sure that we're stopping those chargebacks at all costs.
I think that's worth
I'd love to just talk to that for a second, because I've talked to several firms. There was a firm here in North Carolina where I'm located that absolutely refused to do electronic payments at all because they were so concerned about chargebacks, right? It is just not something that I see in the legal industry a lot. And when you look at how a credit card manages chargebacks, you can, let's just take American Express, for example, which has the best customer service and will give you your money back anytime they possibly can, right? If you have on file the record of the work that you've done, the total value of that work that the client agreed to pay, the authorization to charge, and folks, if they are actually putting the information into the electronic payment system themselves, right? They give you the either credit card and it's tokenized on your side, or they're paying a one-off invoice. It is practically impossible for you to lose a chargeback dispute. So it is important that you document. I just want to step away from electronic payments for just a second here and just take one step further. When you send out your invoices, you need to make sure that they are clean, folks. You need to be tracking every single minute that you are working for a client, everything that's billable. Even if you work for a flat fee, you need to be tracking what you do. I talk to a lot of firms that say, oh, well, I bill flat fee, so I don't need to track my time. That is a not smart position, right? So track your time, track your time. It is your best defense against chargebacks, and best defense at the bar level.
Unambiguous description of your time, so that people can't, like, what does this like review documents mean as a time entry, right? I mean, so very detailed language in your time entries. I mean, we could do a whole nother live Q&A, we probably will, about how to prepare an invoice. And call me naive, but the whole chargeback thing, I sort of feel like, wouldn't you rather deal with a chargeback issue than chasing somebody who just has refused to pay for the same reason? Like they're refusing to pay for whatever, or they're asking for the chargeback for whatever reason. I would think in many cases it can be the same issues, but at least in the chargeback scenario, you do already have the money in hand versus still just trying to chase somebody to write you a check. Again, I might be naive in that thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of where my head goes.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. I mean, you want to get paid, right? But yeah, I mean, you're getting paid. Like that's the biggest thing. Then you can handle whatever else happens after that. But they signed to pay you, and you do the work, and you bill for it. You should get paid for it.
You should get paid for it. You should get paid for it. I was just in a webinar, last week and a half, who knows? Since COVID, I have no sense of time, right? Who knows how long ago something was. But I was just talking, I ended the webinar about the value of your own time, right? You have to bill for your time. You have to account for what you do. And it's not just about getting paid for it. It's because the services that we provide as legal professionals matter. And we've spent a lot of time honing our craft to make sure that we're able to do that.
Well, I know we're at the top of the hour. There's one last quick question that I think we can answer, and then we will break. And it kind of goes back to that the zero AR and when you get charged. If invoices are going out monthly and being immediately paid by a credit card on file, how does the client have the time to review the invoice? And I think hopefully we answered that, Bernard, that it wouldn't be immediately paying by the credit card. You would have a period of time that would pass between when the invoice is going out and when you would run that payment. But the point is, you decide when you're going to run that payment. And I know, again, using TimeSolv Pay, you can run those in batch, just one click and charge them. There is nothing that would happen that is set up in any of these systems that I'm aware of, where as soon as the invoice goes out, it automatically is going to run the credit card itself. Even in where you do have that number stored, there is still, like, you have to do something to initiate the payment. If you decide that I'm the one who wants to run the payment, it's not going to happen automatically. The only way it would ever happen automatically is if you do set up a recurring payment or a payment plan, but that's obviously a different type of scenario. All right. Well, hey, this has been an hour that's gone by fast. I appreciate everyone hanging with us. For those of you that had some specific questions about some of our products, and I know there was a couple for CosmoLex Pay, a couple about TimeSolv Pay and Rocket Matter Pay. We will route those to the proper people so that we can do follow-up and make sure that you have all of your very specific questions answered. So appreciate your flexibility with that. Adam, Joyce, it's been fun. Thank you, guys.
It's always a pleasure. It's always great seeing you too.
All right. You guys have a great rest of your week. Great end of the month, everybody, and a great Labor Day weekend. And we will do this again next month with another topic. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.